Okay, Unathi decides to write a book. And my first question was why did you feel that it's so important for you to share this with the world?
Oh gosh. Let me start from the beginning with Unathi, and because the book is based on my life and I've written the book. So it's the story of a girl. I was, while growing up, elalini, Ngojini in the Eastern Cape. So what happened was, while I was at home, during my adult years, after leaving Rhodes, because you and I met at Rhodes University, Mos. Yes, that's where we met. We were attending various lectures together, and we had a friendship at that time as well. And it was a time when I wasn't quite sure how to best present myself as a full being. I was a student, yes, at Rhodes. This person was forming these very special friendships to me, but also I was in the process of seeking spiritually in terms of who am I in the bigger scheme of things? Who am I and what am I in this world for? And that process set me on a path of further self-seeking, because I came to realize that we are not, we are multidimensional as human beings. So we seek knowledge, yes, but we also seek belonging. We also seek this sense of self outside of the social confines, outside of culture, outside of the establishments that are there in society, that we tend to want to associate with. And that journey led to a point where I got to social media, because I was now on Facebook. I had reunited with my friends from that life, the tertiary life and my childhood years. And it occurred to me that not only was I grappling with a definite sense of identifying myself to others, but that my friends even didn't know me fully. That in my earlier years, I was not forthcoming in terms of who I was. So I started blogging. I started blogging on Facebook about my upbringing, and that opened up a conversation, not only with my friends, but everyone else who was in my social media circle at that time, who then said, Unathi, their friends would comment and said, I never knew any of this. But it was not in a way that, made me feel, ashamed or in any way reprimanded as to why I would not share such details earlier with them. But it was rather an invitation. That's how it came across to me. It was an invitation to say, Unathi, I didn't know this, but do tell us more. Because I was writing as though I was writing to an anonymous audience, because I wanted to be sincere with myself. It was like an open journal, Tomyam. It was like, come into my world. I will allow you in. Just see Unathi. So it came from that place that eventually people were like, don't just blog, please write a book. And at that time, for me, it was just nice to hear all that kind of stuff, the compliments of you write so well. If you were to tell the story, it would touch so many people, that kind of feedback that I was getting at the time. But it only came to me years after I had started blogging that I truly needed to write this book. Not only because of personal developments, because a lot had happened by the time I decided to write the first manuscript. And then by the time I got to the second manuscript, more had happened. It was like, for me, the plot thickens. The plot thickens in my life. At that, I am writing a book, but just my lived experience was forcing me to share the story. So ultimately, I got to this stage of ultimately publishing the book in 2021, during the COVID-19, lockdown and that kind of stuff, where I was having personal reflections. And fortunately, I had this story that I had parked at that time. You know, I wasn't sure if I wanted to publish at that time, but 2021 came, and then I was like, yes, this is the time to do it. So I'm giving you the background so that we have an understanding as to how did we even get to the book. That's where it all began, with blogging and just reflections on social media.
And I think it's a beautiful reflection for me. And as you are speaking, I'm just reflecting as well on our days roads, how our interactions were so sincere. You know, I personally never felt there's nothing hidden. And I suppose it goes to the question of identity, and how we may think that it's formed early on. But for me, I think it's something that you come into it as a person through the different layers of your life that get peeled, some get introduced, some get shed off, you know, but it's a continuous process. So I'm interested now in knowing, in these reflections of yours and your life and your writings about identity, did you have a moment of sitting down and thinking, in Dobana, it doesn't matter what the reaction is, I'm now ready to put myself out there, despite the outcome, despite the reactions, but as Unathi, I'm now comfortable, and I feel that I'm in a space where I can put this baby out for the world to see?
Yes. Oh, there was a lot of deliberation, Tomyam. Oh my. Because with this kind of book, if you're going to tell your story, you know, the very personal and deep details of not only your own life, because your life is linked to so many other people or characters in your lived day-to-day life. So I had to be cognizant of that, first of all. How do I tell my story without necessarily, what's the word I'm looking for? Without coming across as though I'm self-indulgent. And not caring, you know, what the implications are for anybody else. It's a matter of Unathi has something to say and she will say it however she feels, you know. And this is not to say I would not be true to myself, but I had to reflect on such, and also to come to myself and say, why are you doing this? The motive had to be the ultimate deciding factor for me as to why am I telling this story, and why in a book that is so personal. So I realized one thing, and that is, this is not only my story. That's what made me decide to publish it, that this is not just Whawha's story, because that's my, you know, my childhood nickname, and hence the book is titled Whawha Was Here. Yes, and for me it was a selfless exercise. Although one may think that writing a memoir or an autobiography is more of a, you know, you are narcissistic and navel gazing. That's not what it was for me. No. That's not what it was for me. It was more of, how can this story serve our society? Can it serve our society? Because, I mean, I can process my stuff in private. I can go to, you know, to a psychotherapist or get the necessary help that I would need if there's stuff that I need to process in my real life. Ndiyakwazi uthetha mos, you know, ne-friends zam, and just have private ways of dealing with stuff, journaling, yonke laa nto. But writing the book was not just about me. And I thought, if I'm going to put something out in the public domain, I must keep in mind that people will actually spend their hard-earned money firstly to buy a book. They have to spend their time reading this thing. It must be worth their time, and also it must leave them richer than it found them. It must add some value to the reader. So I was very respectful in that regard. I was like, okay, if this thing is going out to society, after people have read it, I'm hoping that they will reflect not only on my life and what it is that they've come to learn of this girl, but also perhaps begin to introspect And maybe also, maybe somebody somewhere out there would be like, okay, so this girl grows up in this village, lives this life, and I get the sense that she's in a particular space at this moment. So maybe I too have permission to write my own story, because I think there can never be enough stories, not only from society as a whole, but I think Black girls have a lot to share with the world, not only at this time, but just even if we need to revisit previous periods of our lives to reflect on developments that maybe we didn't have the language to reflect on at the time, because this girl writes the book and publishes it at 40, but it actually begins telling her story from her preteen years. So for me, yes, I had to consider all the different elements of what it means to tell your story publicly, where you have to share, delicate details about your family, about, your community, and how I also tried to approach this in a way that would be perhaps protective of people's identities, is that I've fictionalized some name, well, all the names actually, I did fictionalize, and so people who would know me personally, yes, they would know the characters, but the broader society wouldn't really know. So yes, that was my attempt at protecting people's privacy and identities as well.
And I think one of the things I've come to appreciate about you and your use of language is the beauty with which you're able to craft a story. When I was reading about your preteen years, I was able to imagine Unathi, at that age. So you were able to take me on a journey as a reader, in your development, in your growth. And I'm not sure whether it was deliberate or not, but the language that you used, it was able to move with the different phases of your life. And I really appreciated that. And I also think how things were phrased, they were very respectful. There were times when I thought that certain things that have happened would have elicited very strong emotions from me as a person, but how you then craft that emotion in a book, it cushions how it might have been for you in reality. And then that leads me to this question to say, how was the reception of the book within the broader family?
Reception within the broader family. All right. So now this book has been out for just over 3 months. And so there's been enough time for people to read it, whether virtually, as an ebook, or also the print copies. So some of my family members, have read the book in hard copies. They actually asked for copies, which was so heartwarming to me. So they have those. And then also we have family members that are abroad. So they've had the opportunity to read the book online. So what I'm trying to say is that there have been efforts from family to read the story and to actually give me, and also for some of them to briefly engage with me in terms of what they've taken from it. And what I've appreciated is that it's clear to me that the struggle that I've had, the tussle within my soul when it comes to my identity, has not only affected me, it's affected my family as well. So I think this has also given them the opportunity not only to speak to me about it, but maybe to have internal conversations with themselves as they reckon with, where does this place us? Because this stuff is true. None of this is made up. It is true. This is what actually happened to this child. And also, I think it serves us as a beautiful tool as a family to engage, to where we need to, maybe to share different perspectives and maybe reflections, where family members may feel, certain things should have been presented differently. I'm going to give you one example in that regard, Chomiam. So my biological mother, after reading the book, her first take was, oh my goodness, you've done a good job in telling this story, because she read it very quickly, cover to cover, because it's not a difficult read. And as you say, that what I've really tried to do is to cushion the blows, or to cushion the reader from the blows, rather, even where the subject matter is difficult that we are dealing with in the book. And I think even with her, I mean, in the context of the story, without giving the book away, there are certain things that perhaps should have been done differently, or could have been done differently. And she's an integral role player in the story of this child and how she's been brought up. So for her to come back to me, ACT, you've done well in how you've told the story. And then for her to read it again and then come back to say, this particular element, this thing happened, but not quite in this way, but the way in which you were told that it had happened is the adult version that was presented to you. So to have such as well, where you must be humble enough to accept when another real life character comes to you after you've published a book, because just because you have the pen and you are the one who wrote the book doesn't mean you are beyond reproach, or maybe you cannot be in some ways, you know, corrected so that your story is properly aligned. And it's not major, it's not major stuff that you know would throw off the entire course of the story. No, not at all. But it was just for her to bring clarity to a certain element. It was actually just one element, and I welcomed that, and I think that's how it should be. But also it opens up these conversations. It brings us to conversation. So I've had different reactions. I've had some family members who have still promised that they will get the book. I'm waiting for, you know, for them to have that opportunity to read it as well. But it's really been, it's been heartwarming overall. The reception has been heartwarming because it's a true story. There's nothing made up or embellished about it. It's how the cards have played out.
No, it's amazing. And before I forget to say this, I really take my hat off to you for being vulnerable, you know, and letting us into your world. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when we are dealing with a complex issue of your identity,
yes,
where many of us would feel that it would define how people see us going forward, you know. But for me, the fact that we're brave enough to lift the veil and say this is who Unathi is, I really think I should commend you. And I wanted to make that point before Ndilibala, just in case in the conversation.
Thank you.
But for me, now, speaking about family, and I don't want to give away the book to people who haven't read it as such, but I was having a conversation and we were talking about people who are absolute angels, you know, who are able to take in and raise them with an abundance of love.
Yes.
And that is what you went through, you know, with your mother and father.
Yes.
As Unathi, that experience of someone loving you wholeheartedly and unconditionally, how has it shaped who you are today?
My word. Yeah, the unconditional love, unwavering love that I've received from my parents in my formative years, because I think it's so important. Their foundation of love or lack thereof that we receive as children is key in just shaping us and informing who we become. So thank you for that question. And I think eyona nto Thomi yami ngayithetha ngothando ebantwaneni is that children feel love. Children feel rejection. Children feel strongly. And in our community, I would hear it while growing up, where adults would say, when somebody enters the house and the child would be, you know, hesitant to go towards that person, either for a hug, whatever the case may be. And the grown-ups would later say, once this person, you know, has left, the child could feel that person's spirit. They could feel that there was something not quite right with that person. So the energy, yes, children read that stuff and feel it very strongly. So I knew, even while growing up, that my parents loved me. I never doubted it. I felt it. I was never a child who was told outright that she was loved, but my parents' actions were so imbued with love that I could not help but read into it that everything they did came from a place of the heart towards me. It's as if they were committed to not do any harm towards me, not only physically, but in every other aspect of my life. So I experienced deep love. And what that has done for me, to answer your question, Doc, is that it has taught me to love others. That is the basic, that is the most basic answer I can give. But to layer it even further, not only to love others, but also to leave room even where others err greatly or gravely, to leave room for, some kind of, what's the word, for reconciliation, but obviously without compromising on myself, because sometimes we can be so wide open that we think if somebody has erred, then we can just welcome them back like the prodigal, whatever that they were, and embrace them. No, that's not what I mean, but rather that I always leave room for understanding. First of all, where did this come from? Why did this person act like this? And then decide how I would like to proceed with the relationship. Because at key points in my life, my parents, for me, embraced me at times when they didn't have to. They were not obligated in any way to continue as they had in my childhood when I acted out, so to speak, in certain ways. I'm going to mention my teenage years, for example, because there's a chapter that deals, with something that happens, with me as a teenager. But my parents continue to love. They continue to love, they are steadfast, they are consistent, and you can read from their acts of kindness and deep love and care, Indobana, they will not be shaken. So this is the kind of love that I've received, and I try to pay forward to others as well. Yeah. And I think that's why I like to also surround myself with people that also exude love. I don't want to be surrounded by strange energies. So as much as I give it, I want to receive it, because I know what it's like to receive it. So not only has it taught me how to give love, but that relationship, that foundational relationship, has also taught me how to receive love, and how to spot the difference between love and that which is not.
It's not, yeah.
Yes.
And I think that is absolutely amazing. And you and I spoke about black text, and that's why for me the concept is so derogatory. Because I always say, if you look at how we built African families, societies, and communities before, it was on the back of, I'm going to lift you up and I'm going to assist in whatever way. And for me, I always greatest expression of love. And I always say to people who speak about Black love, I look at a history of my own family, right? Of people who were very generous towards my own mother and my grandmother. And I always say the source from which it started, it laid a foundation for many generations to come, and that's why I have an appreciation for Umama Nodata, because they laid a foundation with you, Unathi, which lays a foundation for your daughter and her daughter and for future generations. But today, we term it in the most negative way. We say it's black tax. And for me, it's absolutely heartbreaking that we've turned an act of absolute selflessness into something the soul. And I hope that as people read the book and they get to see the impact of this couple that really were not forced to do anything, but they did it, and they did it fully to a point where it was healing, it was restoring, and it was just something that has then laid a foundation for you to be able to give that onto others. So for me, it's something that, you know, I hold dear to my heart, and I hope that it's a conversation that we can always have with people, so that we change the narrative around what we now see
as Black text.
You know.
And I think we need to have conversations around the concept of Black text, because I think when the practical and demonstrated experiences of people who have benefited from what is, you know, termed Black text negatively, would tell a tale that would open our eyes as to the far-reaching repercussions of those acts within our families, because we embrace people who mete out, you know, charity or acts of kindness to strangers, or, you know, the broader society. But it seems we do it begrudgingly when it comes to our families, and that's where it's supposed to begin. That's where it's supposed to begin. And of course, there are nuances here, because there are people sometimes who feel like, why must it be forced? You know, because somebody would maybe say, in this context, of course, my parents made a choice. Nobody forced them. It wasn't a matter of, you know, here's a child, you will take care of her, and because you have the resources. But rather, it was a very, for them, it was voluntary, very much voluntary. And yes, and it was not only with myself, Chomyam, as well. We must be clear on that. Yes, the relationship that my parents had with me was that of a father and a mother, you know, clearly. But we also had sometimes other children from our relatives who would come and stay in my home from time to time. They would leave, so they would come periodically. And my parents would always mete out kindness to family members, support, send others to school, that kind of ubuntu, you know, we throw around ubuntu so freely and so casually, but in the practical sense, they did that thing. So Black text for me was a very foreign concept when it came. I was like, what are we complaining about? And then I would hear different stories, and then I had to take stock and be like, okay, this is my personal experience. This is how my parents, you know, demonstrated this. So I must also be open to listen to those who would say, no, I feel like I have to do this at gunpoint. Like I have to be held ransom to send my siblings to school, you know, just so that, because I'm always open to these conversations and more, to say, okay, tell us, how is it that for you feel disgruntled at the very prospect? Or what is your lived experience of this Black text? Or can we term it differently? Can't we call it something else besides Black text, maybe? And because it sounds so, it sounds so taxy and taxing. And
tax is a grudge transaction. Huh?
Yes, it's a grudge transaction.
It's a but I'm appreciating also that, you know, people's lived experiences are different, as you say, and I always say to people, I'm very clear that there's a difference between health exploitation, and we must never confuse the two.
Oh yes.
And you know, and at what point are we able to go back to that which was the core of us as abantu, you know, that so that abantu are able to progress. But I hope that it's a conversation when I can explore deeper and hopefully tell a few stories, you know, that highlight what we've termed as Black text in a different and very way, you know, as something that's been a vehicle for change agents, not only within families, but in communities as well. So that's a conversation that you and I will have.
Oh yes. We'll continue that conversation for sure.
Definitely. Talking about e-identity, you yourself are a parent now, and nobody wants to know now, what is the journey in for lack of a better word, I would say in conscientizing your own daughter about issues of identity, how it's defined, and how one can claim their own identity.
Right. It's been a very interesting journey. Firstly, because my daughter is a different kind of a child to my personality as a child while growing up. So she's completely A-type and out there, and she speaks her mind. She asks questions, she's active. Whereas I was more of a demure and very quiet child, incredibly quiet. And now she actually asks me questions like, how come do you have so many friends from your childhood years if you say you were quiet? And I say, I wasn't.
That's a good one.
Yes.
Good one.
And then duty, Galoko, I was not a mean child. I was a kind child, but I was just shy and quiet. And, I enjoyed being with my friends. But that also helps a lot because she asks those kind of questions. And I had the opportunity, multiple opportunities actually, to speak to Azo about the importance of this journey. There are times when I will tell her, I'll be speaking to so-and-so now, conversation about the book, and go into one of the themes, that we'll be covering, because she's turning 13 this year. So I can have so I can have meaningful, yes, injalo. And because ukhulile, and she's at a stage where she's not only able to understand when I'm sharing with her, ubana umama ke ngubani, omakhulu bakhe ababini, that she's aware about, okay, so I have these two grands, and this one is the one that raised you, and you seem to be more attached to the grand that raised you than the grand who you say is your natural mother. And she will actually say it, and then she will say, okay, so she says your identity makes my head fuzzy because there's so much complication. So much complication in there, but she will always ask the pertinent questions, and she's also aware what it means for her. And we actually and also a couple of years ago I decided that we needed to do these lineage or genealogical tests that they do. It's not a DNA test, I don't know what it's called, but that stuff, because I'd like to trace our roots beyond our immediate family, beyond, our cultural context, just to see who are the other people out there in the world that we're related to. Because what I think is also vital is in our children, to instill a sense of belonging to a broader community and broader society. Because sometimes we become so bogged down with dingumxhosa, but you don't even know how far back does that lineage go. Is there a point where maybe there could be some Egyptian people or whoever in your bloodline that you know nothing about? So it's become a very important exercise for me to do with my daughter, and she's aware that it's something that I want to do, because I would like to challenge myself in that regard of, I don't even need to know because while growing up, uko ichomi zethu that would proudly say, I have a friend, for example, from high school, from boarding school, or city kuza, you mazizi, because her clan name is Dlamini, and so Amazizi, and for me, it was such a sense of pride for her to say that. And it's something I've never done in my life. I've never, ever, because I became aware at an early age that although I was praising myself by my father's, clan name, or Jola, or Ngwanya, the works, I became aware that this is something that you do when there's a blood, lineage kind of story going on. And so I was reserved even in that regard. It's not something that I did proudly or openly, but also because of the kind of personality that I had. I was not in that way inclined. So in terms of identity and passing it on to my daughter, it's been a conscious exercise, that it's something that I need to do on an ongoing basis. She's aware that there's a grandfather somewhere that she only met once. She's aware that another grandfather has passed away, and she's very curious about this grandfather who passed away because she never got to experience him, Udada, who raised me. So these are the things that we are navigating at the moment, but it's very important for me and for her too, to have an understanding, because it sets the tone for the way forward. Who does she say she is? So it's important.
So reading the book, one of the things that hits me, and I've always known this about you, but I think the book just brought it much closer.
All right.
Is your beautiful use of words. I don't know how you pick the words that you use. and I'm curious, in your writing, do you sit and think, this could be phrased this way for it to have this level of impact, or do the words just flow and you put them down? What has been the process? Because for me, it's been such an interesting read.
Wow. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you, Zanele. My goodness. And coming from you, and in this context, I'm going to address you as Doc, because you are Dr. Zanele Wongiwe Ludidi. So coming from you, I take that very seriously. So thank you. And with that said, I think words speak to me before I am able to transfer or translate them to the reader. So it's a very weird process for me, Tomiam, because as you will know, so I'm a singer, but I'm also a writer, and I'm also, left-brained. So I'm weird in that sense, but I channel all these differently. So when time comes for me to write, a story or a book, or this particular book, it felt like it was narrated to me before I could then pass it on to another reader. It felt so fluid as I wrote. So yes, there was a first draft, even with this final, installment of the book. I wrote the first draft and I said, okay, this is the skeleton. I knew exactly what the form was going to be. I knew that the child was going to speak, in a certain way. I knew that there would be different voices throughout the book. And then I knew that the story had to be heartfelt, not only from my, for the reader, but it had to come from my heart, first of all, as I feel things. So I wrote according to the way I feel, or revisiting the emotions of the child. So is there a magical process? I think there is. I think this is a spiritual exercise, because I don't think I'm a storyteller for the sake of it. And for the longest time, if you had said to me, you're going to write books or whatever, I would say, no, I sing. You can tell me that, that at some point, maybe I'll pay more attention to my singing and be more serious about it. But for now, it was just a matter of writing for fun. But when time came to write a book, I understood that I had to be very careful how I phrase things. I had to be careful how I visited people's homes through this book, because this thing is going to come into your personal space. It carries not only these words, but it carries an energy too. We spoke of energy. It carries an energy too. And every time, you're not the only person to tell me this about the words. And I thought to myself, this is not just me. Yes, it is me. I admit that. But it's almost as if I'm a conduit for some voice that is bigger than myself. So amagama la andwazi nam sometimes avela, but even I am overwhelmed sometimes when writing, and I have to leave the thing alone because it feels as though I'm downloading from another realm, and then it's like, okay, leave it alone. We're gonna do this again another time. So it's me, but it's not just me. Spanins.
Yeah, and I truly get where you're going, you know, to say Israel before us, they're with us in so many ways and in so many forms. So we know this is a book about Unathi, her childhood, her discovery of who she is.
Yes.
But if I were to give the book to someone, and they say to me, okay, in 3 words, what is this book about? Just 3 words. Okay, just 3 words. What would you say the book is about? Just 3 words.
Just 3 words. It's about a girl becoming. It's about, if I can stretch it even further, it's about trying to make sense of one's ultimate identity. Because I think we have different identities within ourselves. So I would say it's about a girl trying to make sense of her identity, but it's also about a community of people that whose roots of culture and a deep sense of spirituality informs, you know, everything that this girl is about. She's ultimately aware that she's not from here. That this is a book, it's a gift to a society, I believe, that is trying to grapple with itself currently. Who are we? Who are we really? So this one story, in the foreword, I believe Vuyelwa Manti says something about a story within an arena of a family or something along those lines, but also a reflection on our broader society. That's what it is. That's not 3 words. That's a lot.
I've got my 3 words.
Okay.
So it's becoming, it's identity, it's spirituality. I've got my 3 words.
Thank you.
So absolutely got it. Absolutely got it. So as we're speaking, Chomiam, you remind me of something that you said in the beginning of our conversation, and that you've also mentioned encwadini about your quest of finding out, why am I here? You know, it's a recurring theme in the book. And my question to you is, the Unathi that I am chatting to, has she found on why she's here?
Oh gosh. Why is she here? Let me take it back to a time when I was at home. So I had finished studying at Rhodes, and then I had a period where I was at home trying to figure out what's the next step for me. And I was sitting on there was a bench outside on our veranda stoop, and sitting there actually typing on my phone, why am I here? It wasn't why am I here? Why on earth am I here? Or something along those lines, because at that point, I was really, really frustrated and trying to figure out why does Unathi exist? Why am I on this planet? Yeah, so it started there. But now to a point where at 40 years old, I turned 40 last year, and I was thinking to myself, okay, it's a milestone. What can I say, you know, at this point in my life? I can say, you know, I know for sure, as Oprah would say. What do I know? Yes. What do I know for sure about Unathi and her being here at 40? Because I've now come to realize that the journey is ongoing. You touched on this earlier, that sometimes we think our identity is static, but identity is actually a very dynamic thing. And I think we must allow it to be that and keep questioning. But there's something comforting for me at this stage that I can say with absolute conviction that what I know for sure is that I am a spiritual being. It's often said that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. I believe that with all of my heart. And for me, it gives me a sense of grounding, that in any space that I navigate, whether I'm at work, in friendships, whether I'm having my cereal, whether I'm taking a walk down the street, I am so aware that I'm a spiritual being just passing through here. And this is just another phase in my existence. And I think that's the conclusion that I've come to. I may not know ultimately what it is practically that I'm here to do, but yes, but the practicalities are informed by the conviction that ultimately I'm not here for selfish reasons. So whatever it is that I do must be informed by the fact that I'm on assignment from somewhere. It's as if I dropped down here on a parachute or something, you know, those private agents that would be in movies, and this person just gets dropped off in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, off you go to fulfill your assignment. It feels as though there's something specific that I'm here for, and I will not know what it is ultimately until maybe I've exited from here. But my job, yes, but my job is to, within this world, align everything that I do with the sense that I answer to a being that I cannot see. But clearly, when I look at myself, somebody made me. I may not understand all there is to understand about spirituality, but just looking at you through the screen, we're having this engagement, and with love, with laughter, and our bodies telling us we are hungry now, we must eat, you know, that stuff tells you that this thing has been designed by somebody. And for me, it has led me to reach out to God in ways that make sense to me. There are times when I will just sit and do absolutely nothing. I will not pray. I will not play music. I just sit, and in acknowledgement of my existence, that I am here without doing anything at all. I am here. I am here. And whatever it is that I do with this being that I am, must always download something from that realm that I cannot see, even if I don't have the cognitive understanding for it. Ngoba kaloku sifundile Tomyama ndithi siye esikolweni, and yes, siye sicinge into yobana ke ngoku because sifunde ezincwadi we get more and more understanding of why we're here. And it's like, no, you do increase your knowledge. That's great. It's really beautiful. We need it for this space. But there are things that sometimes elude you, and you need to tap into another realm and be like, knock, knock. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. You know? And yeah.
I'm appreciating the honesty in saying I'm not there, because I think at a time where there is so much pressure on, you must be able to define your purpose. You must be able to define your why. It must be concrete. You must go for it. And so I'm appreciating the acknowledgement of the spirit being in a physical realm. And you know, I sometimes think that just by acknowledging that some of us are already living our purpose.
Yes.
Right? To be something that is so concrete that we can define with words, and we can say with absolute surety that this is why I'm here. And I always say that as we journey going forward, just the mindfulness of I'm here, for me, it's enough.
That's enough.
Of that I'm here. And while I'm here, I will do my absolute best to honor my presence. For me is really one of the steps into getting to know why you are here. And if you never get a concrete answer, that's also good. But the fact that you've been able to honor, you know, your presence, okay, here is one of the things that I consider to be a gift that we should be able to embrace in totality. So thank you for being eloquent in how you put it, because I think I didn't have the words for it.
Those
what
words
would it mean if I were in this particular manner. So I didn't have.
Yeah,
So Chumyam, there's certain parts in the book that you've gone into greater detail with, and there's some of them where you've just given us snippets, and we always wonder, I wonder what,
yes.
But there's a particular that I personally feel that you really indulge yourself in the time writing it, and that's the chapter about Utata and when he was ill. Is there any particular reason why you felt you had to be that deep and have that much part of the book dedicated to him and what he went through?
Oh man, it's as if that part wanted to be written in that particular way and I didn't realize how much space it took up until the book was finished. And I was like, oh my word, it sits there. And I think it sits there quietly as well, because you only realize once you've gone through it that, oh my goodness, that was the most, detailed. It's the longest section as well in chapter. And I think it speaks, although it was not intentional on my part, but I think it speaks a lot to the kind of honor I've always wanted to give to my father. Because Udada, yes, maybe that's how it came out. And because Udada, I feel, did not get the due recognition, while he was still here, in terms of the fatherhood that he afforded me. And I believe that that story or this story in that particular chapter decided that this is how the honor would be bestowed upon him. And yeah, that's all. I really cannot take the credit for that as to why that is the chapter that is the most detailed. But also I realized that in the others that are a little bit on the shorter side, or where I don't give away the entire story,
there we go. That's
okay, Chumyam. I was carrying on, so I answered your question, until I answered it. I think I answered it up until the end while you were frozen, so it should be fine.
Oh yes,
yes.
Okay,
it should be fine. It should be fine,
No, that's fine.
But it was along the same lines of I just wanted to honor him, Yonkeland. Yes.
Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense.
Okay.
And are we planning another book after this one?
Are we planning another book? For now, let me just say, Whawha wants to take center stage. So okay. she wants to be out there, telling her story and all of that stuff. So I'm giving her a moment to do that stuff. But I must say this, though, Chomyamundobana, I love writing. I've always loved writing. I always knew this about myself, but I never thought that I would venture as far as to say I would be writing books. But this book has planted a seed in me that, okay, maybe I can do this again. And not only, yes, and not, once again, not as a narcissistic exercise, but something that would benefit, society once again, and maybe something that would also be less, not even autobiographical, just another work. That's what I'm toying with, but I'm not committing to say that's what I'm going to do. But this experience has given me an opportunity to reflect on what else can I do in terms of book writing. And yeah, so answering your question without answering your question, really. Kodwa when ndiyabhala at the moment, I am writing, I'm continuing to write.
That's writing.
And yes, I'm continuing to download from the other place.
We look forward to the downloads eventually.
Thank
and I
you.
don't doubt that in whatever form or shape, it will be a beautiful piece of work that we will get the privilege of reading.
Thank you.
Chomiam, kuyo yonke le experience yobhala, reliving the childhood. How reflect, what would you say have been your greatest lessons and takeaways?
The entire process. Okay, the greatest lesson for me is that you are never alone in what you're experiencing. I think I started out thinking I'm just telling my story, even when I was blogging. And then I realized, so, sibaninzi. And I think in living the experience as a human beings, siyaphila sonke apha, and sometimes siyoyika to say things because we think we're the only one. I'm the only one who's experiencing this, and not knowing babakhona abanye abantu who are hoping that somebody somewhere will say what they've been feeling all along. And this has been my experience after publishing the book, because abantu who have come to me with their own reflections, abanye like from different corners of my circles and beyond. I've had people who I thought, because I thought this phenomenon that I'm speaking about in the book as one of the themes of mothers who whose children are raised by their own parents, so bakhule besitho mama babo ngosisi and all that kind of stuff. I thought that's only in the Xhosa context. So I was carrying on there, being like, oh, this is probably going to be a story that appeals to Xhosa people and the rest of it. And then my friends from other cultures would be like, we are familiar with this. It's not just it may present differently. Like I have a friend who speaks I think Sepedi, and he refers to his biological mom as Sesi. And such experiences where this experience has reminded me that we are more alike than we are different. As human beings, and sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we exist in these little silos thinking this is me and my lived experience, so this is what it's taught me firstly. And then also secondly, it has taught me that sometimes when you think that you are doing something that could possibly spark controversy or things like that, and you anticipate such, and to liberate yourself, you must do these things that you sometimes fear, other people might be opposed to, and they might feel, why did she have the need? Why did she feel the need to do that? Do it anyway, because it liberates you. You are so important, just as this individual entity. You are so important that you must do whatever it takes to liberate yourself. Your being here, we were talking about presence, just as a human here. Stamp your presence here. Be like, not just Whawha was here, but Zanele was here, and I will show up fully as myself. And this is one thing it has given me, to show up, to really show up and not be shy, to raise my voice about the things that matter to me and ultimately matter to others too. But to be your own advocate, you must have agency when it comes to your well-being and your own life. And you'll be surprised what you will find out about yourself during that exercise of just strongly declaring your presence. Yes.
And I like that so much, especially within the African context, where we are raised to be humble, to be modest. Don't voice out your opinions too much. Don't really be vocal about your needs, And I think in the process of doing that, we rob ourselves and each other of fully living and being fully expressive of the things that we want. And we really then subject ourselves to a lived experience that's almost diluted, because it's not full on as compared to what it would be if Unathi was to boldly declare and say, as Unathi, A, B, C, D, and Itandi, or D, E, F is what I'm going to go along with. So I think what you've said is quite important in being able to broadly, to really be able to proclaim, to say, this is who I am, and show up fully. So I honestly think that the people who are going to be reading the book as well, once they've read the story and they're able to identify with parts of the book that also resonate with them, they will also walk away with the same level of awareness, that you've just articulated in the last question.
Wow, I hope so too.
So Shomiam, where do we find Unathi the woman today? In what space is she in?
Unathi the woman. Unathi the woman is very much just an older version of the girl in many ways. And what I mean by this is the heart of who I am is still very much intact. I've always been caring, kind, and compassionate, very, I am moved by other people's experiences. I love community. I think because of the kind of home I grew up in, where they were, my parents were always embracing of their own families, but also their community in that village that I grew up in. So I'm always about community, even if it's virtual, but I want to feel connection. So first of all, that's where Unathi is. She's still very much about, let's connect. Let's feel each other's hearts, man, through words and through stuff like that. I'm a texter of note, so I'm very intentional about communicating not only my needs, but affirming those around me. It's something that comes naturally to me, and I don't know I think it's just who I am, besides how I grew up. I think it's just the person I've always been. So I do that in different ways, but beyond that, I work in a space that allows me to be very much driven. I'm heart driven, although I'm also a left brain person. So I'm able to utilize everything that I am for good. And I lead with my heart. When I smile at you, I'm really, really just smiling at you. I have no agenda about it. It's who I am. And in my words, that's who I am. So that's how I'm conducting my life right now, Chomyam. And in the book, I don't come through clearly as to where is the adult version now, only because for that particular exercise, I wanted the story of identity to be told so clearly, and for people to get that sense of Unathi. And then I thought, okay, now, if there's anything else I'm going to do after this, that would be about the older Unathi. But where she is now, location-wise, she is based in Cape Town. She works for an organization that serves communities. It serves the people of South Africa. It's a non-profit organization. It's very, very much hard work. More than anything else, there's head work involved there too, because I also take care of financial elements, within the organization, governance and such stuff, serious stuff. And not that the hard work is not serious, but I'm very much about, let's touch lives. That's what I'm about. I live this thing, I breathe it. So I think it has a lot to do with how I grew up, but also I think it has a lot to do with who I was intended to be. I think I'm just becoming more and more of who God created me to be. And yeah, in everything that I do, even in my adult years, I will start by asking, so how are you? When you call me for work and you want to discuss work-related issues, I first want to know, how are you really? And that's just who I am currently, doing different things, but with the same heart and spirit.
And may all those different things bring you absolute fulfillment, Chomiam, because I don't think there's anyone who deserves it more than you.
Oh, thank you.
A parting question from me. That little girl, Miss Nodoli, you know, if she were to see you today, what do you think she would say? You know,
oh my goodness. Oh, that little girl, Miss Nodoli. Oh man, I think, gosh, Whawha, the original. I think she would be so overwhelmed, not only with pride, but with a sense of, I finally get to breathe. I think she would say, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to breathe. And thank you for showing the world that I actually do have a voice, because she did not know that she could use her voice. She knew she had it, you know, to do other things like sing maybe in her teen years or whatever, but this voice that can speak to you, that can speak to others, speak for others, and speak for herself. I think she would be so grateful. Yes. Yes.
Wow. Absolutely beautiful, Shomyam. Absolutely beautiful. And you know, I would echo her in saying thank you. I think it's seeing the bravery of others that also ignites something in us. Because I think most of the time, as not because you're not capable, but because you're you know, just the fear of putting yourself out there, the fear of being rejected, the fear of being judged, the fear of, oh, I will not be enough. So for me personally, the work is important in breaking all those shackles, right? The only thing you need to do is to put yourself out there. Everything else is outside of your control. It doesn't matter. Even if you had magical powers, you would not be able to control how people receive you, how. But you do have the control in terms of how much you want this lived experience to be enriching, not only for yourself, but for other people as well. So I join the little girl in saying thank you for gifting us with a beautiful piece of work. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping to share it with friends, which means now you need to tell me, how do I get hard copies? Because I'm not one to share the copy that you sent to me. I actually want to buy the hard copy. So how do I do that?
All right. How do we get that hard copy? Okay. The best thing about this exercise is that I, as the author, am able to supply readers with my book myself. I don't need to send you here, there, or anywhere else, you know, to get it. I have the books, and anybody who wants to order the book can either go to my website, unathik.co.za. Just send me a message via the contact form, and I will engage with you. I manage, you know, that communication myself. So you'll be communicating with me. Yes. And then there's another alternative. If you want a shortcut, just email me on whawawashere@gmail.com. So it'll be WHAWHA was here @gmail.com. Once again, you will be writing to me directly. You just let me know how many copies of the book you would like, maybe for your book club, or maybe for your family, or just yourself, for your own audience. And I will attend to you. I will make sure that you get your copy. And then I will also give details, you know, when you communicate with me, as to how the courier will work and all the rest of it. But I'm only asking for 180 Rand for a book copy. And then for courier, we arrange whichever option would suit the reader.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
I can. No, we'll talk further about that. And I think that's me for today, you know.
Thank you. Thank you. And before you sign off, Dr Zanele Wongiwe Ludidi, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for you. You know, the girl that used to sit in your room at university, and we would have our very casual conversations, and you never turned me away. I mean, I would come to your room to have coffee and rusks and would play music and the rest of it. It goes that far back. And I must say that what you have alluded to, that sometimes we are scared to do the things, that would liberate us because we think of how it would be received. In writing this book and publishing it, I hope that there would be more. I hope that there'll be more from you, from whatever it is that you want to put out there to the world. You've already, given us such a stellar example in being, Dr. Ludidi, and I'm sure there's so much more to come from you. We appreciate that as the Black girls that we are. We thank you very much also for your own achievements. So yes, we can leave it at that.
Beautiful conversation. I'm looking forward to us having some more on different subjects and topics. But yeah, for Iwonga, of having a conversation with me about your book. I thoroughly loved it, and I honestly think that it's a story that should remain relevant for a very long time to come. So